First thing I ever mention to anyone that I'm going to be working with is, how are you talking to yourself? Because we've got to start there.
Well, today I have another very interesting topic that myself and my friend Nuray Ozden from Australia will be discussing it together. She is a second-time guest on the podcast. She just has this amazing aura and this amazing heart. And I thought that she would be a great person to discuss this topic of self-love with. Welcome, Nuray.
Hi, Monica. How are you? It's so
I'm
good to connect with you.
great. I'm so happy to see you. It's wonderful. I love our chats together, whether it's on Zoom or just on WhatsApp, and I can't wait to see you sometime this year.
Oh, absolutely. I feel the same. Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year to you as well. So, the topic of self-love, I think both me and Nuray have both struggled with this throughout our lives. And when we realize how important this is in our lives, we or when we actually, I guess, when we really discovered like what self-love really means and how much it changes and shifts our aura, our life, our vibration, we felt like we had to share this with you guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one, like before we get started, like there's a one quote that really stands out for me in the topic of self-love. And this is a quote by Elsie DeWolf. That's
Mm.
the author's name. And it says, "I'm going to make everything around me beautiful. That will be my life."
That's
Yeah,
lovely. It's
it's
just goosebumps.
such a yeah, it's such a great quote because it shifts that perspective, how we perceive the world around us. And
Yes.
it's this commitment of creating our surroundings beautiful. You know, one person can look at a rose and see the thorns, right? And another
Yeah.
person can look at the rose and see this beautiful flower. And so,
Yes.
yes, life is not perfect. There will be tough times, there will be hurt, there will be judgments, whatever it is. But we get to choose how we view the things that happen around us.
Absolutely. That's such a great point because ultimately, and I'm sure a lot of people have the perspective that, we have, is that we ultimately create our own reality. So, it's no one else in the world that impacts on our world except us. And once you truly grasp that you are the creator of your reality, that
Yes.
quote that you just mentioned is so true because it's up to us to create a beautiful world. It's up to us to choose how we respond to the events of our life. So that's a beautiful quote to start off with because it really sums up everything we're really going to talk about.
Yeah. Well, Nurey, when did the process of discovering what self-love truly is, when did that resonate with you, or when did that start for you in
Well,
your life?
I suppose for me, it started when everything went wrong, so to speak, in my life. Um, I thought I had a set concept of self love. Growing up, I felt loved by my family, looked after, but truly, it wasn't really self love. What I think back to early on when I was growing up, that I was seeking love from outside of me.
Hmm.
And when I had a personal tragedy in my early 30s of giving birth to two children that were stillborn, and then consequently, as a result of that, my marriage ending and a few other things that led on from that, I hit rock bottom in terms of, I would say, self loathing. And I felt like a failure as a mum that I couldn't give birth to my children and bring them alive into the world. I felt failure as a wife that I couldn't make my marriage work. And I felt failure as a daughter that I let my family down. I let my, and there was this real deep self-loathing that was so painful that it led me on a journey of an internal journey, so to speak, of really trying to figure out how to come back to love, I suppose.
Wow. Wow, I actually didn't know that about you and your life. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the courage of sharing that because that's not easy. And like when you said self-loathing and stuff, what happens when we do in situations like that, we judge ourselves so harshly, like you did this, like it's your fault somehow. We're just humans. Things happen. Stuff happens in life, and a lot of times, we can't always control the things that happen. And really, life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% how we react to it, and how we see the things, what we focus on. Do we focus on the what happened, the problem, or the solution, how we can make it better and how to improve whatever we need to do? And obviously in your situation, there's nothing you did wrong, nothing that was your fault. It just happens. Sometimes it just happens. And
And I think that's a great point, Monica, in that at that time I blamed myself. So that's one of the, let's say, primary emotions that we often result in blaming ourselves for a lot of things. And that was the reason why I couldn't get out of the self loathing. And it was only until, and this is a very important, probably, awareness that I had, was forgiving myself. And like you said, having the awareness that, okay, this event happened in my life. It's not nice, but which lens do I view this through? And I can now say, hand on my heart, moving forward 14 years down the track from all that personal tragedy, that event, however tragic it was and however my life fell apart, served a purpose in terms of getting me back to love, opening my heart more, because it really did sort of get me back on track in terms of really understanding the true meaning of what love was.
mm,
Because even at that point when I felt like everything was great, I was not really loving myself. Like I said, I was seeking it from outside of me, love from my husband, my kids, my friends, my family. And ultimately, that's a short term lived type of love. For me, self love, and the reason why we've named this self love, is it's got to come from within. And my true point of view is that if you don't cultivate that within yourself, you really can't truly love another being or have someone truly love you, because at the end of the day, it's more of a conditional love. So that's sort of what I've found up until this point, is that it's got to come from within, it's got to come from with you. And you have to embody that state before you truly can see it unconditionally around you.
that's beautiful. And and you're right, it does have to come within ourselves, from the inside, from our heart. And we can't just be like, oh, I love myself, yeah, but then we treat ourselves a certain way. We drink too much, or we ingest foods that really are not good for our body. That's also part of self-love. And that actually was something that took me a very long time to understand. Like, I would tell people, and I was like, oh yeah, I love myself. But then I would abuse myself with those things, with, eating, binge eating, or drinking too much at some point in my life. And really just not really understanding what that self-love really meant. Now it's different. I've learned to, like, I truly, when I say I love myself, is I love myself. It's I forgive myself for anything that happened, or the lessons I've learned. I don't call things mistakes, I call them lessons, because we always learn from all those things. Life is full of obstacles. Life is full of pain. It's hard. And when we look at the things in our life that happen in our lives, when we look at it as they are happening maybe for us, I know it's sometimes hard to look at it as it's happening for us, and we think it's happening to us. But when throughout and I know that one is still kind of hard sometimes for me to comprehend at some points, because when those bad things are happening, like you losing a child or this, like, it's hard to believe in those things. But what I've learned is that the things that have happened for me, or to me, I guess for me, I think of those things as kind of building blocks or building bricks in my life. And previously in the past, when there are things that happened to me that were hurtful, whether it's relationship or breakup, what I would do, I would take those bricks and I would build walls around me, really big, high walls, because those bricks to me kept me safe. I built those bricks to keep me safe. Well, now what I do with those bricks, instead of building walls with those bricks, I take those lessons, those experiences, and I build a stairway to the stars, to the moon.
Oh, I love that. You're
But
so
it's
right.
so,
And what you're touching on is that when we build those bricks, we're building those bricks around our heart. And where do we love from? Where does that love come from? It comes from our heart center.
yeah.
So if you're building a big wall around it, you're really limiting yourself in terms of how much you can open your heart and how much you can give and receive um, from other people in your environment. So yeah, I love that. I love that concept, or like you said, touching on the fact that we build walls in our lives when we get hurt, and it all goes back to how do we respond? How do we view this event in our lives? Do we blame ourselves and do we go into self-loathing, or do we look at it? And again, there's a normal human physiological response to grief. Like, for example, in my situation, it took me a few years to go through the grief cycle and then to come out the other end and then to really look at and go, okay, how did this happen for me? And honestly, I can say my beautiful twin boys were the biggest gift of my life, because they really did put my life back on the right track. And before that, I was probably living more of a Joneses life, so to speak. Living the house and the picket fence and the two kids and the dog, and I wasn't really truly living it from a point of loving Nurey and coming from that space.
Wow. Well, that's beautiful. I mean, it's beautiful that through that you could see the building bricks and what changed, how it changed in your life and how it resonated, even though it's still so hard sometimes to understand and comprehend those things. So
Exactly. And
I
this is where we've got to really truly understand. And there's that point of view of, yes, something's happened in our lives. And like you said, we can view it as poor me, or view it as, okay, how am I going to build those stairways to the stars? How am
mm,
I going to use this event that's happened in my life to really remember who I am? And ultimately, self-love goes to remembering who we truly are. And my point of view is that we are all love.
yeah.
That's what we come to realize in this life, that our whole journey is. It's a journey of ups and downs, and coming to the realization that we are divine love. We are that universal love. And the moment we get that, the moment when we go, okay, certain events have occurred in our lives, possibly to help us, have more of a perspective of, or learn how to forgive and forgive ourselves, particularly, like you said, rather than going into the blaming and the body shaming and everything else. It's about, forgiving ourselves, truly forgiving ourselves, and saying, I did the best that I could at the time with the resources that I had. And then moving forward from that. And I love the way you brought up, like you said, that your body, managing weight, because that was something for me. I found that I ate as well out of stress, and that was something that I really did. When I was in that self-loathing, I punished my body by eating out of stress and probably not eating as well at those times. And if you think about it, it's like, poor body. It's here to serve us. It's our vessel that houses our spirit. And here we are going, well, I'm gonna blame you and punish you because I'm feeling crap. So
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all of it is how we talk to ourselves, the thoughts we think, the food we ingest, the people we allow in our lives. It's all self-love. It's all how we respect ourselves. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
And I know last podcast we talked about water and obviously the importance of, water, hydration being really the primary nutrient of our life before anything else. And when you think about it, if we are like 99.9% water, and we know there's been a lot of research that's done with water and how the molecules change according to the energy that you give it, according to how you speak around it. You can either speak in self-love or you can, like you said, speak unkindly to yourself. And then that does structure the water that you're either drinking and that's in us. So you can imagine you can have, water crystals and molecules that are just resemble love or self-loathing. And that's a really important thing to think about because people don't often comprehend the importance of self-talk. And that's one thing as a speech pathologist, I know I always, first thing I ever mention to anyone that I'm going to be working with is how are you talking to yourself? Because we've got to start there. Are you
yes.
telling yourself you can't do this? Are you telling yourself you're no good? Are you telling yourself you're not worthy? You're too fat, you're too skinny, whatever that might, I'm too old, too young. We've got to start with that. And the moment we start with that, then we know that we're at least on the right track of, okay, we're creating that self-love from within. We're making sure that the water in us, that we are predominantly water, is responding to words of kindness rather than words of hatred.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that was a big transformational thing in my life as well, is changing the type of water that I drink, structured, molecular, hydrogen water. It did something, I don't know, to my mind, my body. It really changed the way I resonate with things and thoughts. And I know it sounds kind of like woo-woo, but I truly believe in that. Like if you're 99.9% water, it's a big deal,
Well, we can't deny that. We can't
Yeah.
deny that. Like you said, water is impacted by the vibration
Mm.
and the frequency that you emit to it. And when, like we said, the words that we speak emit a vibration. And it's if you
Yeah.
speak unkindly about yourself, you can
Mm.
imagine what the predominant emotion is going to be in your body. Yeah.
Yeah. And think about like a baby in the womb. Like the baby is surrounded by water, like amniotic fluid. Like we are like that's how we start really through it's so incredible when you really think about the meaning of it and how much it really means. And if you're struggling with like maybe even self-love, like that's something that I mean I haven't really thought about it like deeply before, but that's something that perhaps you could evaluate is the type of water and how much water you drink and what kind of things you put in that vessel, because we are a vessel. Our whole body, our living it's a vessel. So
Absolutely. And I love the way you were saying that it really starts in utero and people and this is what I find that when people are pregnant or even when babies are born and they're newborn, they feel that the communication around them, or like you said, what you put into your body, they don't realize the impact it has on the environment around that baby. And like you said, babies are predominantly water too. So and I have a perfect example of, with my pregnancies, with my daughter, I was in a very good space and I was very loving and I was just in la la land, I call it. And she's pretty much that. She's come into the world with feeling like bliss. Whereas I remember with my son, he was born after the twins, after my personal tragedy, and I was fearful and I was scared. And he had a level of anxiety when he was born, and
mm,
I can tell that from day one. And you can't make this up. It is literally, like I said, it was the predominant emotion that I felt that probably marinated both kids in the state that they are in, the state that they were born in.
wow. That's Yeah, it's so incredible to think about it in that sense, because we usually don't think about it like that. It's really
No,
cool.
we don't think of the impacts that our
Mhm.
self-talk has. And like you said, it even has that impact on when you enter a room. Have you ever been in a situation where you walk into a room and either there's someone there that sucks the life out of you, or someone
Yes.
that really you enjoy the conversation and you go, where did the time go? And again, it all goes back to the vibration that person's and the frequency they're emitting. You do get a sense of someone that's more into complaining and gossiping and not feeling good about themselves versus someone that's more confident and emanating love from their heart. There's a difference. You pick that up in the vibration and frequency, even when meeting someone.
Yeah, I agree. And and then really, like, when it comes to life, everything, whether it's good or bad, it's really just a story that we tell ourselves, that we create about the situation or whatever it's going on at that moment. And that story, for those who kind of think, they blame themselves for things that they've done or haven't done, you can change that story in an instant. Kind of think of like a dry erase board, right? You can write a story on a dry erase board, but you can change that story and rewrite that story at any point in your life. It doesn't matter if you're 70, 80, or 90. That story can be rewritten. I do a lot of Tony Robbins events and the whole idea of like that motivational stuff. And gosh, there's people from all kinds of countries, all different ages, and they're all there to change their story, to become something and do something, whatever it is that resonates with them at whatever point in their lives. So every story can be rewritten. There's never a moment in your life where you cannot change something, or it is just the limiting beliefs that we carry in our mind from maybe childhood, or maybe the things from the past. And those things, really, that perception is what holds us back. But it can shift at any time. You can change that story. And we're both an example. Me and Nurey are both an example of that. We both changed our stories. We both decided to live in a beautiful state and create a certain aura, a certain glow, and whatever, however you want to call it. So
And I just love hearing that in terms of, like you said, at the time, and I know that when you're in the midst of anything, it could be that any life event that doesn't make you feel good. But when you really do step into that self-love and nurturing yourself from within, with really thinking about what you're putting into your body, who you're surrounding yourself with, when you get to that state, and then you realize also too that you can change your story, that things happen for us, not to us, that we're really not the victims that we think we are in life. It's just so empowering, because it's about looking at that situation from a different lens. And I love the way you touched on the fact that in the what we call the imprint period in our lives, from 0 to around about 7 years, but really the first 3 years is the most crucial in terms of being programmed by our environment, by the people around us, and to have certain points of view. And what that does is those stories and those programs that we develop very early on in life carry throughout our lives. And I have a very specific example to share to that particular story and program that I carried with my first day of school, when I started school at the age of 4.5. I'm bilingual, so English is my second language, and I started school not having a word of English, and I started school in Australia. And I remember my dad starting or taking me to my first day of school, and I was crying. I was scared. I didn't know what to expect. I couldn't communicate with the teachers or new friends that I had made. And I remember my dad waiting there with me, and I'm just crying. And he goes, "Oh, darling, just stay here. The teacher's going to come and get you, soon." There was like an assembly where the bell had gone. He goes, "I'm just going to go have a smoke and I'll be back." Well, my dad never came back. And that story I created from that was, my dad doesn't love me. My dad abandoned me. I mustn't be good enough, etc., etc. All these stories that I created. And fast forward 40 years down the track, after obviously realizing that things happen for me, I sat him down and I said, Dad, you know what? That situation, for some reason, as I was going on my self-healing journey, that was really coming up in my awareness. That story that I had on my first day of school, feeling really yucky. And at that time, that was probably the starts of, self-loathing and not feeling good about myself. And I sat him down and he said, darling, he goes, I never forget that day. He goes, that day I couldn't handle you crying. He goes, I loved you so much. And he goes, you were my precious little girl. I was the first girl in our family. And he goes, seeing you cry broke my heart. And he goes, I couldn't deal with it. So I just had to go. He goes, I had
Oh
to
my
just leave you
gosh.
there and go. And he goes, I'm so sorry. So can you see, based on that situation, my dad had a point of
Yes.
view and I had a point of view or a story, and we both had completely different stories. And he did it from a basis of, I can't handle seeing my precious little girl crying and in heartache, and that's the way he dealt with it. And I just felt, and I created the story that
Wow.
he didn't love me. It was a complete opposite. So the reason why I talk to this story is that we really do, our perspectives can differ with people. Like you said, you could present it with the same situation and one person can see it from one lens and another can see it from another lens. And it's really the moral of the story is to really not assume or interpret a story in a way that it's only from your view. Like I said, there's multiple views of that situation that could have happened. The teacher could have had a different perspective. My friends could have had a different perspective on that story. So it's
Yes.
just,
Wow.
it
Yeah.
really does. It's a really great story to illustrate how these early programs shape us as an adult. And I have to admit, moving forward, I felt really found it difficult to trust and fear. And I had this underlying story that, men end up leaving me, hence my divorce. I had two boys, my children were two boys. So with it, when I had my twins, it was like, oh my God, no one loves me, everyone leaves me. That was the story, that was the flavor of, the spring, so to speak, throughout my life. And until I literally pulled that story from its roots and out of my life, then things completely changed.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that fits in so perfectly with the whole, the stories we tell ourselves about things and people and life. And, don't listen to that story all the time in
Yeah.
your head, because it could be different for someone else. And even if it's not different for someone else, you can change that story. You can recreate a different story at any point. People do things sometimes in our lives for different reasons, but rarely do they do things because of us. They do things because of them and not because of us.
Just what a perfect sort of segue into that. Anything that sort of shows up in our lives, like with my dad and my story on my first day, it was his pain that he didn't know how to really deal with
Mm.
that ultimately led to my story. And that goes to when you're with people and you hear things or they say unkind things or etc etc. You can choose to say okay and take it personally, or you can say, well, it's where they're at and they're obviously going through something, and it's always a reflection of them, not you. And I always say that to my children, especially, as they're growing up and they don't have the level of consciousness that we do or the awareness that we do, is that when you're in a situation or someone says something to you or there's something that's occurred that's unfavorable, have a look at it. Really, don't take it personally. Think about it. Did that person say those hurtful words because they're hurting? Look at the bigger picture, have that helicopter view of the situation. And it's so lovely, like you said, that, when we think of our life as being developing those stairs to the stars, you get to a stage in life where you can have this wisdom and share it with your kids so they don't ultimately have to go through the same pain and grief that you did. And so for me, from very early on, I could share with my children when they'd come home crying, saying so and so didn't want to play with me, or so and so said that, my hair looked really ugly today. You can say, okay, well, how was that person feeling today? Do they feel really good about themselves? And again, take it away from them, that personal story too. Maybe that person's going through a really tough time. Again, it's not acceptable that they use those unkind words or those actions, but it's up to you how you respond to it. So you can take it personally, or you can say, you know what, let them know that you're not happy with those words, and that you're not going to choose to listen to it, and then deflect it back. So it's a really, really great point that you bring up, that really it's all about how we respond to the things that show up in our life. And that's been a huge, huge, huge life lesson for me, is how we respond.
Well, thank you. And thank you for sharing all those things. I hope that the listeners out there will get some kind of I don't know, like they will use this as a help in their self-love journey of hopefully growth. I still sometimes judge myself. I still create stories in my head. So it's not perfect. You're not gonna like snap out of it and be
Oh,
like suddenly, oh, that's perfect. It still happens, but we just deal
oh.
with it better. We do learn over time. And that's what our hope is with Nurey. We hope that this will inspire you to really put yourself first and really love yourself, forgive yourself. This brings me to, I don't know if you heard the Hawaiian prayer, the Ho'oponopono prayer.
That's something that I utilized, and really in my life at that time when I was working on, or working through my self-loathing, was that ultimately forgiving the people around me, but ultimate self-forgiveness starts with you. And that was a prayer that I used to really help me move forward, and to get to that place of cultivating true self-love for me. Did you want to talk about what that simple prayer is? It's so
Yeah,
simple, but yet so profound.
yeah, if you want to explain, because there might be people out there. I just recently learned about it last year. I never heard of it. It's called Ho'oponopono prayer. It's very simple. Nurey, if you want to explain it, that would be great.
It's it's really just four simple phrases that really helps with self forgiveness, and forgiveness of others. And we know that a lot of uh, difficult to moving on in our lives is the fact that we hold on to resentment, or like you said, hurts that get stored and locked into our body. And I always say that you've got to, there's a saying I have, that you've got to feel to heal. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that we stay in our feels for the whole day and feel angry for the whole day or sad for the whole day, but we really need to feel and work through those feelings and emotions that we've had about a particular situation or a particular person, and then get to the other side of it and neutralize it. And again, look at a different perspective, look at the benefit, look at the drawbacks of it first. That's often what our mind will go to first, but then look at the benefits and say, okay, why else could this situation have shown up in my life? But going back to that forgiveness practice, it's just four simple phrases of, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, and thank you. And what it simply does is it really moves you from those lower vibrational emotions of fear, shame, and guilt, and it gets you into your heart center and to that state of love that we truly are. So when you get to the saying, to the last part of the phrase, when you say thank you, I love you, you're in your heart. And
Yeah.
that's our true essence, is that we are really all loving beings. We are pure. I always say, we, in very simple terms, we're all energy, we're all water, we're all vibrating molecules. But at the end of the day, if you want to use very simple language, we are all love. We're that frequency of unconditional love. And when I say love too, and this is probably what we need to talk to as well, Monika, is there's a different view on love out there in the world that we see, a toxic love, or love with attachments, or love with conditions. And I know for me growing up, and especially in my marriage, and obviously I'm separated now, but when I was in my marriage, I thought love looked like a particular way, and it had a lot of pain and hurt, and it was, I had to be a certain way to be loved. And so my view of love was completely skewed, if that makes sense.
Mm.
And so it's really important when we say love, that you truly understand love has no judgment. Love has no fear. You cannot have love and fear existing at the same time. And when you truly get that it has no judgment and has no fear, then the state of love is unconditional. It's not, well, I'm going to love myself when I've got the perfect body, or when I've got the perfect hair, I've got the
Mm-hmm.
perfect relationship, I've got the perfect back balance. That's conditional. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it's you are love. You have to embody that first and foremost, and then things change in your life.
Mm-hmm.
When we've really got to understand what love means to ourselves. Is our love still dependent on people outside of us, on what people do for us, on how people speak to us? Is it dependent on what we do for ourselves and how we speak to ourselves? It has to start with us. And I find that with anything in life, we have to embody that state first before anything changes in our life and before we see anything in our lives. Truly.
Amen. Amen to that, Nurey. You cannot expect other people to love you and accept you if you don't love yourself. You don't accept
Yeah,
yourself because it's not going to resonate. You might say, "Oh, I do love myself," but deep inside you don't. It will
exactly.
show. It will show through. It's something that you cannot, that vibration, you cannot lie. You cannot hide
Yeah.
that vibration.
I
And
have
I've
the most,
tried.
trust me, exactly. And what happens is when stress hits in that situation, when, like you said, you're pretending to, you wear a nice dress and you go and have a
Mhm.
massage for one day. Oh, I feel I'm loving myself now. And then
Yeah.
stress hits and you go straight back into self loathing and judging yourself and not feeling good or judging the situation. Yeah. And energy doesn't lie. You have to change that energy and frequency within for it to then magnetize, things in your life to you. It all starts from you. You're like I call the lighthouse.
Yeah.
What you emit comes back to you. Like attracts like. So if you ultimately deep down have covered self-loathing and judgment with, oh, I love myself, that the cracks will show eventually.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I hope that this will resonate with some of you guys and will show some light to you and maybe will help you get through whatever you're working through and truly dig deep into the self-love and what it truly means and how much it can change your life when you embody this energy, this vibration, because it truly is beautiful. And, again, I don't wish I knew something before, right? Because there's a time for everything. But this is the kind of stuff I wish I've listened to, before or
Oh,
really understood or learned before. But again, there is a time and place for everything because sometimes we're just not ready to receive certain things. And so I never regret like, oh, I wish I've this or that. But
I love that. And I think also too, I know a lot of people ask me on my journey with, especially, lots of really tragic things happening in my life, is how did you cultivate stuff? Like what did you specifically do? And I know this discussion's around really changing the stories that we tell ourselves, but sometimes that can be hard. And how do you truly get to that stage of, what, really, really loving yourself? For me, when I sort of look at it and summarize it, it all boils down to a choice. And for me, the way I got to self love was not the massages that I had and the nails that I painted and the dresses that I wore. They yes, they made me feel good temporarily, but ultimately it was that internal shift to how I viewed myself and what those stories that I was carrying. And I think that's the key message we want to say, is that it's lovely doing all those extra lovely stuff, self-care days we call them, putting your feet up, going for a massage and having your favorite coffee, but ultimately it goes down to really those long-term practices that are going to help sustain and nourish you in a way that helps shift those stories. So I always say to people, yes, those temporary fixes are great, but you've got to do a regular practice with those. Don't go and get a massage once a year and then you get to a state where you're literally feeling contracted and, oh, now I need a massage. It's about maintenance as well. It's about self-care, self-maintenance, but ultimately self-love comes to self-compassion. It comes to that forgiveness. It comes to changing those stories. They're probably the biggest takeaways that I've had in terms of really getting to that state of self-love.
do you have a certain routine other than, the self-care things like massage? And do you have a certain routine that you do every single day that help you create that aura, that vibration of self-love?
That's such a great point, because I think the routine that really helped shift it for me was having some form of meditation. Now, when I mean meditation, I'm not saying, sitting with my legs crossed and, humming. And if you do that, that's absolutely fantastic. But for me, it was just stopping for at least 10 to 15 minutes and focusing on my breath. And it was that connecting myself every day in the morning to that, call it your higher self, or that spirit part of you, or the God essence of you, or the universal energy that you have within you. And once I started doing that, that's when I felt like I was channeling and pouring that love through me. And it was that when I started creating that connection in the mornings and prioritizing that time for myself through my breath. And then I started adding a routine of having a really, having water, starting my day up with water and hydrating myself, and then really thinking about the first meal that I'm having in the day and how that's nourishing my body. When I really started thinking about all the routines that I have that was setting my vibration and frequency for the day, my life changed. Because you can either wake up on the right side of the bed or the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
You know that.
Yes, yes. No, that's beautiful. And I do think it is important to embody whatever practice you want to choose, whether it's just that mindful breathing for, could be 2 minutes, 1 minute, just
Yeah.
stopping for a second and really just connecting with your breath. And, I'm a big proponent or believer. Like when I first wake up, I say the I am affirmations. I say I am love. I am
Yes.
kindness. I am enough. Like I say those things because they really resonate with you, with your soul, with your mind. It's something like, like when you are in a crowd, perhaps let's think about it, like you're in a crowd and there's so much chatter, people talking, and then suddenly somebody says Nurey, and you like turn around, you're like, oh, somebody said my name. That's how powerful the affirmations are. The I am is that stopping and resonating, actually telling your mind, I am this, instead of just kind of listening to all the chatter in there. So I do think it's so important to say, Monika, you are love. I am love. I am joy. I am whatever the emotions you want to embody throughout the day. And I do it all the time, whether it's before work or the first thing in the morning, even at night. It's a practice. It's not something that just comes natural and suddenly, oh, you're gonna be all these things. You practice those things, just like like bathing. You don't just bathe one time or take a shower one time and then decide to be, you're going to be clean from now on. No, you do it every single day. It's just a practice. It is a daily practice that you have to embody to live in those higher vibrations, those higher emotional things, because the emotions are things that we choose, right? I used to choose fear and the worry and the stress like throughout the day. Those were my primary emotions. And now I choose love, I choose joy, I choose communication, like the higher vibrations in my life. And they really have shifted myself, how I think, how I do things, and how my day goes. And even the people that I attract, like whenever I travel a lot for work and for leisure, pleasure, whatever. And like the people that attract that sit next to me on the plane are the people that I attract myself. It's so crazy how it works. It's phenomenal,
Oh, I love the way that you are, like, as you're talking, I can feel that essence that you've embodied that self-love. And like you said, you're starting your day off by saying, I am love, I am enough. And if you think about it, and I love the fact that you said it's a muscle we've got to build. You don't get to self-love and say, yeah, I'm there. I've got it. I've sorted it out. Life's all good now.
Yep.
No, you're going to be faced with challenges in life that's going to test your self-love again. And really. And for me, it's at those moments, what do we choose? And it's really like building that muscle. It's like these practices help build that muscle of self-love. And we talked about having a certain routine. We talked about what we put into our bodies. We talked about the stories that we tell ourselves and the compassion and the forgiveness, but also even the routine of going to bed, for example. I talk this a lot with my patients actually is the last 5 minutes of what you're saying to yourself before going to sleep, because our brain waves are changing as we're dropping into sleep, really is crucial, because the last thought that you have about yourself before you go to sleep are the primary thoughts and emotions that's going to marinate your body in that sleep state. And how long do we sleep for? 8 hours. So if you went
Yeah.
to sleep going, I
Mm-hmm.
feel shit, or hate that person, or oh my God, I'm not good enough. Well, you're
Mm-hmm.
marinating yourself for 8 hours while you're sleeping with that, and I don't think you're going to be waking up on the right side of the bed with that. And so we have a rule in our house, and this is the other activity or routine that we do to help cultivate self-love, is never go to bed angry, never go to bed with those lower frequency emotions. And really, if you've had an argument with someone, make sure you work it out before you go to bed. And go to bed thinking about something that's magical. And you can think about something, obviously something currently happening in your life, or an event that you feel that is so beautiful, and go to bed with that in your mind, as opposed to those negative emotions or stories that we can often go to bed with. So I think
Yes.
those two morning and night routines are exceptionally important,
Mm.
for really helping cultivate that self-love as well. So
I
really
love
great.
that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Nuray. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on podcast, jump over to YouTube, leave us a comment, like which one of these tips has resonated with you the most? Which one are you willing to embody or try? We're not saying you have to do all of those things, but we're hoping that they will resonate with you in some way. So let us know below and tell us which one of these has resonated with you the most. And thank you, Nuray, for taking that time to come and chat with us. I think we're going to need to continue doing these together, because I
Yeah.
love discussing these different topics. So if there's any topic you want us to kind of touch on, different stuff, like let us know. We'll get together and create another episode. It could be Nuray and Monika self-love episode slash dot 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 dot. So
Absolutely. And if there's anything that we need to elaborate and expand on in terms of just the routines and the steps we took to help get into that space of self-love. And like I said, it's a never-ending journey. It's something that it's a muscle we continually have to build. And as we get older, we get wiser. But like you said, life doesn't stop. Life still sort of, things are thrown at you, and it's up to you whether you go, this is the question I ask myself, and I probably, we can end on this note, is when I'm faced with something, I ask myself, okay, do I respond in love, or do I respond in fear or
mm,
resentment or anger? And for me, automatically love just feels lighter and
yes.
more expansive then. And honestly, your first response might be, oh, and that's okay. But I love the fact that you said emotions are a choice. And I know some people might say, and that could be a different topic of conversation about emotions, because I have that, a lot of people ask me about emotions, and oh my God, I can't because I feel this certain way, and this emotion takes over. Well, if I'm probably going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works, but if we said that exactly emotions are a choice, yes, there's a physiological response in terms of certain emotions, but they only last a few seconds. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you continue to stay in that emotion or feeling, it's your choice. So, yes, we're not denying that emotions don't exist. They absolutely do. And there is a physiological response, but then it's our choice whether we prolong that emotion. Do we stay in that sense of anger for 1 day or 2 days, or do we hold on to that emotion of sadness for, et cetera, et cetera? And so it all ultimately boils down to a choice of, whether we hold on to the emotions or not, rather than trying to just cut them out. Because yes, we do feel them. I always say we're infinite beings having a human experience on this world. We're all, vibration, and we're all stardust, call it. But at the end of the day, we're in these bodies having a human experience, and emotions are part of them. But once you do have the awareness that with emotions, yes, they come, but you can actually choose to let them go, and that's a choice.
Absolutely. We have a choice. It is your choice. Your choice. And the question to you is, which one will you choose? What do you
Exactly.
choose?
Love or
Yeah.
fear.
Well, thank you, Nurey. Appreciate your time, and I look forward to more chats together in the near future.
Oh, I just absolutely love chatting to you too, Monica. And like I said, you really embodying this frequency too. And it's a conscious effort of doing so. So we are here, speaking from experience, the fact that we've got to constantly choose this every day we wake up. So it's not something you arrive to. I think the message is that we've got to choose self-love every day. Every day. It's a choice.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, I just can't wait till we connect again, hopefully in the first quarter of the year or at
Yes.
least in the first 6 months. So I look forward to giving you a big
I
hug when I
have
see you.
some topic ideas already. They're already spinning in my head. Thank you,
Oh,
Nurey.
there's so many. No, thank you, Monica. And yeah, have a lovely January and we look forward to connecting soon.
Yes.